Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. If you are new here, as always, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Make sure that you follow us on all social media platforms, be it on Twitter and Instagram at the Root of the Sci Pod, on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can like the pages, the Root of the Science podcast, and also we are on TikTok as well. So do search for us. All the loyal listeners who keep coming back to the show, love and appreciate you. Thank you so much. A reminder that to stay in tune with a new episode, you can hit the notification button on Spotify or your Apple podcast or wherever else you listen to your podcast. So as soon as a new episode is live, you are the first person to know about it. Also, a reminder that you can support the show with the PayPal link that is in the show notes. Help support the show. Being an independent podcaster, it really goes a long way with helping the running of the show. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Tebogo Maleka, aka the Green Goddess. She's born and raised in South Africa. Tebogo is an environmental professional and a PhD candidate in environmental management. In this episode, Tebogo shares many interesting stories. For example, how she came about to do her exciting research focused on quantifying and examining the removal of microplastics in municipal wastewater treatment plants in the Gauteng area in South Africa. She also shares stories about her life journey and, of course, the root of the science and so much more. Tune in as we hear about all of this. Hi, Tebogo. Welcome to the show.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to chat with you. You know, like, it's so cool to get back to recording, and you're like my first one in coming back. So, yay.
Yay.
All right. So, first things first, Tebogo, can you give us a brief introduction? Who are you? Where you're currently based? And just briefly, what do you do?
My name is Tebogo Maleka. I'm based in Johannesburg. I'm 35 years old. I was born and raised in Soweto, and I call myself a green goddess because that's what I do. I work in the environmental sector. I'm a professional environmental scientist, and I'm currently employed by the United Nations.
Fantastic. Wow, I love that. A green goddess. Yes. Oh my goodness. It like rolls off the tongue so nicely. All right. So Tebogo, before we get into all of this amazing stuff that you've just quickly told us about, it's always cool for us to get to know you away from the many wonderful achievements that you do. So you told me that you attempted the Comrades Marathon. Now, the Comrades Marathon, for those who don't know, is like, I think it's 90 kilometers, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, it's 90 kilometers in South Africa between Pietermaritzburg and Durban and KwaZulu-Natal. So you attempted it. I don't know why, because who does that? But please tell us more about why you did that, because, wow, first of all, congratulations for even trying. And how was that journey for you?
For me, let me start with running. Running for me has taught me a lot of life challenges, how to handle setbacks, how to handle disappointment, and how to set goals. And I think that's how I started running the Comrades Marathon. Like any runner, I started with the regular 5-kilometer park runs. And then, you do your 21 half marathons, and then you wake up one day and you're running Soweto Marathon. And then, the next goal obviously is the Comrades Marathon. So I had put in the work, I had put in the training, and unfortunately life happens, like, all setbacks that happen in life. I think I reached 63 kilometers into the race.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was almost done, but then I collapsed due to dehydration. Yeah, so I couldn't finish my Comrades Marathon. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But I mean, just the mere you even accomplishing that, because I know one of the taglines is, what is it? The ultimate human race or something like that. It's like,
That's correct.
yeah,
That's
like
correct.
I know that's the tagline for the marathon.
It starts in your mind. It starts in your mind, and everything follows. So once your mind tells you that I can't do this, you even if your body wants to go, but you can't finish. So Comrades literally tests your strength, like how strong are you? And it's not just physical strength, but your mental strength is very important. You know, anybody that makes it to the start line of the Comrades Marathon, for me, is already a winner, because it's months of preparation. You don't just wake up and run 90 kilometers. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, true.
So anybody that gets to the start line of that ultra marathon is already a champion for me. Crossing the finish line is just the bonus.
Yeah, true. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, because I'm in Pietermaritzburg. So the signs are actually all over the city now for the marathon. So for the marathon, I think it's happening in 2 weeks' time or next week.
On
I can't remember.
Yes, on the 28th of August.
Yeah. So we were actually talking about that, how you can't just wake up one day and say, I'm running the marathon. You have to run all these other marathons all over the country, like the Soweto marathon that you ran. And just putting it back into what you said about how running is like, it taught you a lot about life. I think it also goes to show about how with anything great, you can't just rock up one day and be a green goddess, right? You had to do so many things before you became that person. And I think it's quite beautiful, that analogy of how you said that it actually teaches you a lot about life in terms of just mentally and physically. But like, congratulations, 63 kilometers.
Thank you.
My goodness.
I'll be going back next year.
Wow, that's great. Okay, you tell me, I'm going to cheer for you on the sidelines because it passes through my tongue. So I'll be like, yes, you're going to, hopefully you reach the finish line. Yes. So now, just to get back to the beginning, before you were this amazing person and before you were a runner and everything, I'm curious. You said you were born in Soweto, right? So take us to the story. How did you get into science, and how did you become this environmental specialist and everything, like the genesis of the story?
Honestly, I was fascinated by the white lab coat.
Wow.
And
okay.
Women walking into a lab with white lab coats and goggles and using microscopes. And for me, it was like, wow, what are these people doing? But growing up, I've always been one to figure out why nature works the way it does. And for me, studying environmental sciences gave me the opportunity to do that, because it opened my eyes to the many natural processes that interact with each other in remarkable ways, while creating everything without human interference. You know, I mean, for a tree to grow, we don't even have to do anything. It just does, you know? And then how nature works also fascinates me, from floods to droughts to how cities are developed, and how people can live more sustainably, to the air we breathe. I feel like all of it is connected, and that's how I got into environmental sciences. And then another thing for me was, you know, we're always concerned about the environment and how it affects human health, not only mentally, but also physically. And being able to provide solutions to those complex situations, for me, is what makes my field of science quite exciting.
Oh, that's such a beautiful explanation. But first things, I love how you said that you were just interested in the lab codes. And I think it just goes back, it goes back to like visibility. And it's a simple thing like a lab code that like just starts that, you know, that it creates that little seed, and here you are all these years later, you know, solving some complex solutions to help people. And I think as scientists, that is why we do science at the end of the day, to solve societal solutions. And currently, your research, your PhD research, one of the solutions that you are doing is you are quantifying and examining the removal efficiency of microplastics in municipal wastewater treatment plants. Can you tell us how you came to that? I know we kind of jumped a little bit from the beginning to your PhD, but how did you get there? And how did you even know this is something that you should be doing?
This is actually very interesting because for me, it was, I didn't even intend on doing a PhD, but let me tell you the story. So one day I was washing my face with an exfoliant. I won't mention the brand, but you see those little beads inside your face washes, your exfoliant.
Yes.
And then as I was rubbing it between my fingers, I had a bit of water in it and this bead was not dissolving. So I looked at the ingredients and it said micro beads. But then I asked myself, what exactly is this micro bead made out of? And if it's not dissolving and it's going through the drain, where exactly is it ending up? So I started a Google search to find out what these micro beads are actually made of. And they're actually made out of plastic. So they're actually called microplastics. So now if they're going through the drain, they're ending up in our wastewater treatment plants. Now, the next question was, how efficient is the wastewater treatment plants in actually removing these plastics? Because they're so tiny. So that's when the topic came about to say, okay, you already have a master's degree. So why not turn this into actually a PhD study? And that's how I came about with my topic of the quantification, particle size analysis, as well as the identification of microplastics in wastewater treatment plants.
What? Wow, that's such a cool story. That's such a cool story.
I want to see how efficient is our infrastructure in removing these plastics, because there's a lot of research now around microplastics and how it ends up in drinking water. There was another study that I saw where they said they've got microplastics in breast milk and lungs.
What? Okay.
So, it all starts here with our wastewater treatment plants to say if they aren't removing these plastics correctly, then there is a potential of them moving into drinking water and then humans consuming it and then it affecting our health and well-being.
So it's like a whole chain, actually.
Yes, which started with washing my face in the morning.
Which is just quite incredible. Where's your research currently being done? Are you looking at wastewater treatments in Johannesburg? Can you tell us more about that? I'm so fascinated.
Yes, I'm looking at metropolitan cities as my focus area, specifically in Gauteng. So I'll be looking at Tshwane, I'll be looking at Ekurhuleni, and I'll be looking at City of Johannesburg. And in each of those cities, I'll be looking at 3 wastewater treatment plants. So that's a total of 9 sites, within the metro.
Wow, that's so cool. Imagine just you washing your face every day and here's your PhD. But you can tell how and you having that almost simple aha moment when you're washing your face birthed such a brilliant concept. And because it's something that you're able to relate to, be it washing your face, and like I said, that in that whole chain system, and actually, I'm sure it creates that passion for you to actually solve this issue. You can tell like how you Googled it and everything. So did you just approach a supervisor and you're like, I have this concept and it was a go, or was it something that was already sort of working in the background?
That's another story. I always say opportunity favors the prepared. I had entered a competition called Imvelisi. Imvelisi is like a program for green entrepreneurs or green people that are interested in the green economy. But what's different about it is that they're not looking for a business that's already established. They're looking for people with green ideas, and then they assist you in developing it. So before this was actually a PhD concept, it was more of a business concept to say, how do I come in as an entrepreneur and replace these plastics with something that's biodegradable? So one of the moderators and evaluators there was a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. And she said, oh, but I remember you from UJ. Why don't you do your PhD? And then that's how everything tied in together.
What? Wow. Your story just keeps on getting better and better. Like, oh my goodness. Wow. I'm just sitting here like, look at all these interconnections. And speaking of that, in terms of these synergies, even your work at the United Nations, there is such a beautiful synergy with your current research, right?
That's correct. So what I found out was that the conservation and sustainability of South Africans' fresh resources is of crucial environmental and social importance right now, especially when it comes to plastic pollution. And then it goes back to that opportunity favors the prepared. So what happened is that they had an event at the CSIR for, I think, biomanufacturers, but the topic was more on like biodegradable plastics. And I was invited by a friend that saw the invite on Facebook to say, oh, there's something that might interest you. Please RSVP and attend. And I attended the event and I met someone that works at the United Nations. I introduced myself, and I think 2 or 3 months later, a position came up. But because I was already aligned and I knew exactly what was happening in the plastics industry, when I applied, then I got the job.
Wow. Like, yeah. Like, I mean, I'm just listening to this and I'm like, oh my goodness, your story is very aligned. But at the same time, you know what I'm actually starting to pick out, Tebogo, in terms of how your mind works or how you operate, is that, you know, for example, when people think of a scientist, right? Most people think of a scientist as just a person who's going to like work in the lab and that's going to be their life forever. But what's coming across to me when I hear all of these moments, like all these opportunities that are coming out, is that you always sort of not sticking to that, what you call it? I want to say straight line, but you always that's trying correct. You seem to always find these very unique opportunities to sort of improve yourself, to learn, and then it creates these avenues of you kind of doing the science and like, especially what you said about the business concept, how your initial PhD project was actually a business idea rather than a PhD idea. So how does, like, in terms of that, like, how does that work? Because not a lot of scientists think in that way. So with you, why is it so important that you always tend to kind of deviate from what is expected, if I can say that?
For me, self-improvement and innovation is very important. I think that's what I strive on. I always look for the hole or the loophole on how to close the gap, because we can't always come in or all be the same, coming in with the same concept. Somebody needs to stick out and be different and look at other opportunities. You know, the lab environment can only employ so many people.
Of course.
So what are you bringing that's different to the industry and as a scientist?
Yeah, of course. But in doing that though, because there's not such a clear roadmap, right? Because your journey is not so defined. And I'm sure when you look back, let's say maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you didn't even know that you'd be where you are. So what are those challenges then in terms of being somebody who kind of takes the road less traveled? I'm sure it's not always easy. It might be easier to stick to that path that's already being designed for you, right?
It's never easy. And honestly, I must say there've been a lot of failures and disappointments along the route. I think my biggest one was undergrad. You know, being a BSc student, chemistry was like a core. You needed to pass chemistry to get into second year. And I had to do it 3 times, you know?
Yeah.
Before I could actually move on. But here I am, I'm a PhD student. So although you plan, life is a certain way of directing you into the direction that you actually need to take. Because initially when I did a BSc degree, I had it was, I think, chemistry and biochemistry. Those were my core subjects. But because chemistry was so difficult, I actually moved on into environmental chemistry, which I excelled in. And from environmental chemistry, I could see that this is the path that I actually wanted to take.
That's quite amazing. I think somebody else, given the fact that you said about how you had to repeat chemistry 3 times, would have been like, okay, you know what? I'm done. This is not for me. And you could have gone and, I don't know, done something else and you wouldn't even have been here, right?
But for me, I feel like the environment is more than just a job. It's who I am. I feel it's a calling. You know, people are called to be nurses and doctors. I feel this is who Tebogo is. Hence, I said during the introduction that I am a green goddess. I even entered Miss Earth South Africa in 2011.
Okay.
And for me, that wasn't even about being a beauty queen or the next Miss South Africa. But for me, it was about learning about the environment and, changing this perspective of what an environmentalist should look like.
And going back to that, what does Miss Earth SA do?
Miss Earth SA is it's more like a youth development program where we are taught skills on how to become more environmentally sustainable and teach our communities about conservation as well as sustainability. So we work directly with communities and schools. We do tree planting in schools. We do recycling projects in schools. So it's like a 1-year program.
Okay, that's so interesting. And I mean, you do already embody that green goddess statement that you describe yourself in. And like, I think the more I speak to you, the more I see it. And I love what you said about how for you, this is your purpose. And dare I say, maybe because it is your purpose, that's why even going off on your own tangents always seems to work out, even though maybe not the first time, but like, but in its own way, it all sort of works out, right? Yeah.
Correct,
And
yes.
I think you also mentioned that you call yourself what do you call it? You speak about how you're always a second time lucky kind of person. And you said that this has been the case for you for your academic journey. And I'm sure you've already told us with the story of, failing a little bit. And you also said that this is also the case in your employment and also achieving your own personal goals. Do you mind just quickly touching more on that?
Yes, sure. I feel like society never talks about failures. Society has made winning the it thing, that people no longer talk about their struggles and failure. And once you fail, you feel like you're inadequate or you're not supposed to achieve that goal. But I found that in my life, I've always been a second-time kind of girl, because a lot of things, not only in academia, but even with Miss Earth, I entered in 2010 and I didn't make the cut, and I entered in 2011 and I made the cut. Even with employment, I think graduate programs, I'd apply the first time, go for an interview, I don't get the job, but then I go again and then I'd get the job. But what I found in failing or a setback, it's that it prepares you for the opportunity, because when you go in, then you know exactly what to prepare. You know exactly what the questions are going to be, and it puts you 5 steps forward compared to not knowing exactly what's going to happen.
That's actually quite true, because you kind of already know, where you failed as well. And then you kind of be like, okay,
exactly.
for those mistakes to not happen, let me do A, B, C, D. And you're absolutely right about how societies does not speak about getting back up again. And, we kind of shun, like, if you failed, oh no, stay there, stay quiet. But the funny thing is that when you speak to most successful people, that is always the thing, like, oh no, you missed, failure is what got me here. But when you're in that failure, though, let's be real, you think your life is over. You think this is it. And I think the difference is obviously how you get back up again, because a lot of people fail and then they stay there. And then I think it's just that difference between how do you get up and continue.
I think even with the Comrades Marathon, when I said I attempted it and I didn't finish, I feel like had I finished the Comrades the first time round, I wouldn't have respected the runners that actually finished, because I ran 90 Ks, I got the medal first time round, you understand? So what's so hard about it? But now I know going in, the amount of preparation that goes into finishing Comrades is, anybody that finishes Comrades for me is like, wow. So for me, the second time will actually be, rectifying all the mistakes that I made in the first try.
Wow, that's so powerful. Yeah, that's definitely true. And I hope somebody who is listening, if they are going through a current failure or a current setback, can kind of look at it in the same way, because you do have that level of respect when you fail.
Exactly.
And if you, because it humbles you so much. And, you know, I think it's so important that, you know, one is able to look at it and be like, okay, if you are afforded the opportunity to come back again and to do it again, you have that humility, because sometimes ego and naivety also go hand in hand, where you think like, oh, I got this. You're like, I got this. And then life is like, no, honey, you do not. You do not. Oh, man, Tebogo, it's been so amazing speaking to you. And as we wrap up, just with somebody who's like listened to your story very briefly, and I'm sure there's a lot more layers, but we've already touched about coming back from failures. But what other motivation or golden nugget would you care to share with somebody who is inspired and who like might want to be where you are one day after listening to your story?
I think the most important thing is to believe in yourself and believe in your dreams, because opportunities will always be there. But if you're not confident and you don't believe in yourself, then you're not going to get it. You know, and a career in science has many challenges, especially for women. You know, to be successful, you need to see the completion in your mind first. You have to visualize the destination and then plot a way of moving towards your goal with resilience and determination. One thing I found is that challenges will always be there, especially for a young girl. You know, if you're coming from an underprivileged background with lack of resources, it's going to be even worse. And the road will always be long and lonely. I can't overemphasize the importance of finding a mentor, somebody to guide you, especially from your high school years, because those will form the foundation of your future, you know, and don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask. Last one, focus. Focus on your destination and you'll definitely get there.
Oh, amen. Look at you dropping nuggets, bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb. I love it. And it's absolutely true. And I love how you said about, you know, finding a mentor and reaching out. And speaking of reaching out, if somebody's like, okay, can I reach out to you? How can they reach out to you?
Okay. I'm on Twitter as Tebogo Maleka _.
Okay, fantastic. And so please, if you are interested and you want to reach out to her, I'll also put her social media details on the link of this episode. Tebogo, it's been so amazing chatting with you. You are absolutely amazing. And I just love your journey. I'm just still like in awe. I love your journey, and thank you so much for being so open about it, about the good and the bad, and also just motivating somebody. And I hope somebody has learned something and is also inspired by everything that you've shared with us today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and to everybody else who's tuned in, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.